So, good afternoon to those joining us online today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on clinical data publication step 2. Thank you for all joining us today. It's great to see the high level of interest in this webinar. I think it really underlines the importance of transparency in today's world. So by way of introduction, my name is Melanie Carr. I'm Head of Stakeholders and Communication Division here at the EMA. And at EMA, we really recognize that transparency is key to reinforcing trust in regulatory decisions in medicines and the work that we do. And clinical data publication, or CDP as we refer to it, is very important, or has a very important role to play in that. So within the division, we have a dedicated transparency department, including a team responsible for CDP. And today the team will present the plans for the next steps to step 2 in the CDP journey. Before I pass the floor to the team, I would like to start with a bit of history. And many of you will be aware that the basis for CDP lies in our Policy 70, which was adopted back in October 2014. And some of us are older enough to remember that happening. So now CDP is, or Policy 70 is now a cheeky 10-year-old, and we marked its 10th anniversary a few weeks ago. So it's fair to say that with CDP, we've been on a journey since our first publication, which was back in 2016. Now, it was suspended temporarily in December 2018 due to the introduction of business continuity measures. Those were initially linked to Brexit and the relocation of EMA from the UK to the Netherlands. That was subsequently extended, of course, due to COVID-19 pandemic. CDP was reinitiated during the pandemic in 2020 as part of the exceptional transparency measures for the COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics. And we were contacted at the time by many of the stakeholders during the COVID years who were eagerly awaiting the full relaunch. So we initiated step 1 of the relaunch a little over a year ago in September 2023, once we had moved out of business continuity mode. And today we're very pleased and very much looking forward to presenting the plans for step 2 of that relaunch. We're looking forward also to the good continued collaboration with you, our stakeholders, as we continue on the CDP journey. Thank you, and I'd like to now pass the floor to Anne-Sophie Henry-Oud, who's head of our Transparency Department, who will introduce today's agenda. Over to you, Anne-Sophie. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Good afternoon. Thanks a lot for joining us today. This webinar will be divided in 4 parts, dealing with the scope, the process, the legacy procedure, and the great collaboration we've been having with Health Canada. And by the way, some of our colleagues from Health Canada are today online with us for this webinar. You will have found QR code, which is leading to a Slido. The Slido is open and you can use it during the entire duration of this webinar. Feel free to address questions, comments, feedback, and during the Q&A session after the full presentation, we will be addressing some of the most popular questions in the Slido. Without further ado, I'd like to start with our first speaker, Karen Quigley, Head of Clinical Data Publication Service. Please, Karen.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased, as we said, to share our plans with you for the next steps of the clinical data publication. And I'm going to kick off the one of the presentations with talking about the scope and the updated toolkit that we've been working on since we have redone the first step for the clinical data in September 2023. So in terms of my slides, we've got the first slide up. So in terms of the current step, we are now currently in step 1 since we restarted. And so that has been applicable for new active substances. And so, as you know, that is for when the marketing authorization application is validated, so that a claim is made at that particular moment in time to say that there is a new active substance. And of course, that is assessed as part of the marketing authorization. So during the CHMP procedure. But if the claim is made at the beginning, then that falls within scope in the current step 1. And then also we have been publishing since 2020 the COVID procedures under the special transparency measures for both the vaccines and the therapeutics. So our proposal in the next phase, when we're hoping to widen the scope, and we have been doing a lot of background work and a lot of reviewing of this. So we're planning to include all of the new marketing authorization applications. So that would include, as we're already publishing the new active substances, but widening that into all of the applications that are submitted to the CHMP. And that, of course, would include also the negative opinions and the withdrawn applications, so any application that may be withdrawn after it's been validated, and also the line extensions and the major type 2 variations. So that is any new therapeutic indication or modification of an approved indication that would be submitted. And we're proposing that change to be starting from Q2 2025. And we have yet to make the final, have the final agreement from our management board here at EMA, and we hope to do that before the end of the year. And so at that moment, then we would announce a precise date for the restart, because we know that stakeholders, one of the questions that they will have is the precise date, and we will also be sending the invitation letters at least 3 months in advance of any restart date. But at the moment, we're looking at a start date from April 2025 onwards, and once that is confirmed, we will make a further public announcement. So the proposal is also to exclude all biosimilars, generics, and hybrid applications. So those of you who are familiar with the Policy 70 and may have read it from 2014, 2015 will know that they were originally included in the policy. And we did publish some of these applications in the first round of Policy 70 when we started back in 2016. However, we realize that these do not contain very much clinical data, generally typically only a clinical summary and then maybe a bioavailability study. And also in terms of our users, we know that they're not very much downloaded or looked at these applications. So we believe that we're going to exclude those in the next step of the restart. And however, we will also continue with our COVID procedures as we do at the moment, so there will be no change there. And then, of course, we would also be publishing any new public health emergency clinical data as that may arise in the future. So, on my next slide, I just wanted to give you a brief snapshot of how the publications have been looking since we restarted with the COVID in 2020. So you can see that there's an exponential increase here. So looking at that graph on the left, you can see in 2020, we just had one procedure. So that was the first COVID procedure as published after the COVID-19 pandemic. So we had the first therapeutics and vaccines being authorized in 2019, 2020. And as they were authorized, and the post-authorization procedures for extensions into new therapeutic areas are widening the indications, that we've published all of the clinical data attached to those packages. So you can see the numbers there. And then from September 2023, we restarted with the initial applications, which included a new active substance. However, the first publication of the clinical policy was only this year in 2024, because like in any Policy 70 procedure, there is a lag time from the CHMP opinion in September for the preparation of the package, the review cycle, and then the eventual publication. So this year, to date, we've published 67 until the end of October. And so we believe that there will be an approximate doubling of numbers in terms of publications between 2023 and 2024. And with the proposal for the further widening of the scope, we expect that to double again next year. So you can see that there's quite a lot of publication activity ongoing. On the right graph, we have just included here the clinical data, the website. So that's our portal, which you can access on our website. And on there, you can see that the number of users who are either reviewing the actual clinical data that's published, or some of them are actually downloading, they're creating accounts and downloading the data for their use and review. And so you can see that the number there is increasing year on year. So as we continue to publish more clinical data, obviously the interest is growing, and we have more and more users who are using our portal to gain access to that data. So obviously, you know, there is a lot of interest in the transparency activities related to these marketing authorizations. On my next slide, I talk a little bit here about the updated toolkit. So this is what we have been working on since we have had the initial relaunch and revision of our internal processes and also the guidance. And this is based on the experience that we've had and updating of the guidance that we have published previously. So before the next widening of the scope, we intend to republish our external guidance. We're working on that internally at the moment. So early in 2025, we hope to publish that, a revision of all of the chapters, which includes on the commercially confidential information and the anonymization chapter, and also on the procedural guidance that's included in that, to bring that up to date and into line with the actual current practice. And linked to that, we also have the publication of our question and answer document. And this document tends to distill down some of the issues that are raised maybe in the external guidance previously, but not elaborated on in detail, where we found that there has been a number of questions being posed. And so that question and answer document, which was published last year, will be updated again before the restart in 2025. And we will take some of the issues that are raised in the question and answers back into the external guidance, but we will also have other issues that will be added to the question and answers document. So we believe that that should provide good detailed guidance for any applicant who's preparing a package for submission under Policy 70. We also have developed in-house a new tracking tool which helps us to manage the applications, and this has been instrumental in helping us to manage a large number of applications, to track the timelines, and it's also linked to the publication. So this has been extremely useful to us internally in terms of managing a large number of procedures and tracking them in a timely manner, and for the interactions in terms of the assessment time points, which you'll hear about from one of my colleagues a little bit later on, the different steps in the procedure. And then another system that we've developed in-house is our document identification system, which we abbreviate to DIVS, in case some of you may be familiar with that terminology. And that is a system which we use to prepare the list of documents which are in scope. And so this is something that we believe that should be a benefit to stakeholders, because we now at EMA prepare that list of documents and we'll be sending it to you along with the invitation letter, so that there is simply a need to review that list, and then agreement is sought as to whether that list is comprehensive, or whether, for example, there are any out of scope parts of documents that you wish to discuss, or documents that are in or out of scope, so we can have a discussion. But that EMA prepares that initial list, which is something that didn't happen previously in the first round of Policy 70. Then we will continue to obviously send the invitation letters a minimum of 3 months in advance, and they contain detailed links to the procedural guidance. And we also have a new standardized anonymization template, and that is also currently published also on our website. So that also brings a new standardization and streamlines the process, the information that's provided and the way that it's provided. So that hopefully, and also the identifiers that are in the different packages can be are listed in the template. So that hopefully will bring benefits on all sides as well. And then we also have the continuing to offer meetings to stakeholders to assist in the preparation of packages. So they're primarily for stakeholders who are coming for the first time, or if there are specific issues that a company wants to discuss with us, for example, around proposed commercially confidential information, or questions about the anonymization strategy that they are proposing. We're very happy to address those in bilateral meetings. And as I say, we will continue to offer those in the next widening of the scope also. And then also we've had extensive collaboration with Health Canada from the very beginning, but we have aligned very much our processes, and we also have a pilot work share, which you will hear a little bit more about from one of my colleagues later on. So I think that the work that we've been doing behind the scenes, the whole team, in order to streamline the process and to facilitate the preparation of the packages and the guidance that will be provided. So we hope that this will bring benefits on all sides in terms of increasing the scope and having good quality, more packages of the clinical data published for the marketing authorizations. So with that, I will then pass to my colleague Silvia Garrido, who is online, and Silvia is going to talk to us a little bit about the timelines in the procedure. So Silvia, over to you.
Good afternoon to you, to all of you. My name is Silvia Garrido Lestache, and I will present an overview of the clinical data publication process and the timelines that are applicable to the different procedures. Next slide, please. So this is the agenda, and I will cover the following points: the clinical data publication dates, the main ones, and the amendments which were included in step 1 of the relaunch of CDP, and that will also be applicable to this step 2. The timelines for applicants to provide a redaction proposal document package, the invitation email that is how the applicants receive the notification from us to submit the CDP packages in advance of the submission time. And then I will show you a series of slides compiling the timelines for different types of applications within the scope of CDP, but in a more visual way. And I will finalize covering the high-level overview of the CDP review process, where there are no changes in comparison with the step 1. Next slide, please. The CDP publication dates are presented side by side in this slide. In one side is written the current version of the policy 0070 and what it has been applicable since the restarting of the CDP in the step 1, and is also applicable to the step 2. So regarding the publication of packages for procedures such as initial marketing authorization application, extension of indications, and line extensions, in policy 0070, the deadline for publication was 60 days of the issuance of the Commission decision. And in step 1 of the relaunch, this was increased to 120 days after the CHMP opinion. This will also be the case for this step 2 of the relaunch. For withdrawn applications and applications under Article 58, the publication deadline haven't changed and must happen within 150 days after the receipt of the withdrawal letter by the agency for withdrawn applications or the adoption of the CHMP opinion for Article 58 applications. Next slide. Regarding the periods for the submission of the redaction proposal document packages, you see here writing side by side the timelines of submission included in the current version of the external guidance and the amendments that were included in step 1 of the relaunch. And these amendments are, you can see, these are written in red. So I take this opportunity, to emphasize what Karen has said, that the external guidance and the Q&A, both documents are under review. And the new version, which will better reflect our current practice, will be released soon. So for initial marketing authorization application and line extensions, applicants will have now up to 30 days after the CHMP opinion to submit the redaction proposal packages. And so the deadline has been extended 20 days in comparison with what is written in the guidance. For extension of indications, the same period of up to 30 days after the CHMP opinion. So the deadline has also been extended 20 days. And for withdrawn applications and Article 58 procedures, the period has been extended 30 days. So applicants must submit the redaction package within 60 days once the withdrawal letter is received by the agency, or when the CHMP opinion happened in the case of Article 58 procedures. Next slide. So those applicants with either products or procedures in the scope of Policy 070 will receive an invitation email at a selected point in time. There are several documents that are attached to this email to use as a guidance for applicants to submit the CDP package. These documents are listed in the slide. So, for example, you will receive a link to the updated Q&A document. You will receive also a draft document for the list of expected documents, and this is to be to agree, with the applicant within 2 weeks of sending the email. We understand that this list might not be the final if the applicants submit additional clinical documents, but at least it's a good base to start selecting the documents that are within the scope. Then there is the submission checklist that is mandatory for applicants to complete, and the anonymization report template that is compulsory also to complete for the applicants or MAHs to explain the anonymization strategy that you follow by the applicant. We also offer in this invitation email to have a pre-submission meeting with us to answer any questions that you might have on the clinical data publication procedure. Next slide. Now, in the next 4 slides, I will show you the different timetables with information that I have already mentioned, so I will not cover much, only to, for example, this one is the clinical data publication timeline that is applicable to initial marketing authorizations applications as well as line extension applications. This is the longest timetable, and I only pointed out to you that you have to see that in the red arrows are the landmarks timetables that you will see in this clinical data publication timeline. Next one, please, is the clinical data publication timeline for extension of indication applications. Next one is the clinical data publication timeline for withdrawn applications. And the final one is the timeline for Article 58 applications. Next slide. Just to finalize, I will show you a high-level overview of the clinical data publication process. In this case, it's for initial marketing authorization application and line extensions. And probably you know the external guidance cover this process in full. There is the starting point is a technical validation step, and this is the starting point. But also the agency performs another validation, and this is called content validation. And this validation is related to the content of the package and is performed within 10 days of the reception of the submission package. If the package is invalid, the applicant will receive correspondence from us notifying the reasons for invalidating the package. But if the package is valid, we start performing the assessment of the CDP package. And you will see in the slide, not all steps that are included in the slide might apply to all packages. For instance, steps 5, 6, and 7 happen in some packages, but not in all. For example, related to CCI, if the applicant doesn't submit or doesn't propose any CCI, step 5 is not applicable. And the same for step 6 and 7, which are related to the anonymization report. If there are no comments, these steps are not applicable either. Next slide, please. Once the assessment of the redaction proposals is concluded, the agency notifies to the applicant that they can submit the final redacted document package. Once the applicant provides the package, there is a quality check done to make sure that the reductions are currently applied and the package can be considered valid and therefore is scheduled for publication. Applicants and MAHs are informed of the time point in the process. We are and I think this is the last slide, so this is the conclusion of my presentation. And I pass the floor now to David Fernandez Lopez.
Thank you, Silvia, and good afternoon to all the attendants to this webinar. In this part, I will cover the agency's proposal on how to handle the clinical data publication legacy procedures as part of step 2 of the relaunch of Policy 17. I will start with this overview of the history of clinical data publication and the policy in the last 10 years that has been covered in the introduction by Melanie, but it will serve well to explain where this legacy clinical data come from and what we refer to as legacy clinical data. As it was already explained in the intro, The first publication of clinical data took place in October 2016 on EMA Clinical Data website, and the activities were, the policy was active continuously until December 2018, when it was suspended due to the implementation of the Brexit Business Continuity Plan. At the time of the suspension of the policy, there were already a number of procedures that had not yet been addressed, and this is what we refer to as our publication backlog. And during the time when the policy was suspended or was not fully implemented, there were also procedures that fall under the scope of the policy and that were also not addressed. And together with the publication backlog, these procedures conform the clinical data publication legacy, which consists, as you can see on the slide, on over 1,800 clinical data publication procedures that have not yet been addressed. In view of the significant volume of the legacy, careful consideration has been given to how these procedures should be handled as part of step 2 of the relaunch of Policy 70. A number of aspects have been considered when making these decisions, and the main ones are shown on the slide. First, consideration has been given to keeping a balance between EMA's duties on clinical data transparency and the resources that the agency can allocate to clinical data publication activities. In line with this, also consideration was given to the sustainability of the cooperation of marketing authorization applicants and holders to achieve compliance with Policy 70. This cooperation has been quite good during step 1 of the relaunch, and the agency would like to facilitate that for it to stay in the same fashion during step 2 of the relaunch. Also, consideration was given to providing an adequate and timely response to public interest on clinical data, which may not necessarily involve or relate to the whole legacy. And finally, to not interfere with the publication of clinical data packages related to the current regulatory procedures, those procedures that will receive an opinion or will have a regulatory outcome by the time when step 2 of the relaunch is implemented. We would not like that these clinical data packages, the publication of these packages is delayed because we are dedicating too much time to the legacy instead. 2 options were considered, and as you can see on the slide, the preferred option for the agency is option 2, that I will explain in a minute. But before that, I would like to say a few things about option 1 and the reasons why it has not been given further consideration. Option 1 involves the processing of the whole legacy, these over 1,800 procedures, either in chronological order, starting with the first procedures in the queue, still pending since 2016, and moving on the timeline until we reach the most recent ones, or by the definition of a priority list that would be based on certain criteria or metrics, mainly related to the public interest. This option has not been chosen for a number of reasons, mainly because in the view of the agency, it may not respond to the interest of the public in a timely manner. Also, the implementation of this option could become too resource intensive, both for the agency, but also for marketing authorization holders and applicants, because here we're talking about processing over 1,800 procedures with the time that this would entail and the resources that would be needed for this. And if a priority list was to be defined, also the criteria for prioritization of procedures would need to be defined, and these criteria may not in the end satisfy all stakeholders. So instead of option 1, the agency has opted for option 2, which involves the publication of legacy clinical data upon request from the public. And these requests would be received in the same way as any other access to documents request via the web form that you can see on the screen and that you can also find in our external website. This channel for requesting access to documents or clinical reports that are part of the legacy has always been open during the whole time when the policy has been suspended. This option has been considered more adequate for a number of reasons again, but mainly because In the view of the agency, it responds better to the interest of the public because here we would be addressing only those specific requests and for sure within a more reasonable time frame as opposed to option 1. This option is also more resource compatible. Also, again, for both for the agency and for marketing authorization holders. And here, I would like to say that we are not really anticipating an avalanche of requests with the implementation of step 2. And this is based on the number of access to documents requests related to legacy clinical data that have been received during the time when the policy has not been active. These requests would be processed either in chronological order as they are received, or in the case when there are several requests related to the same document package for the same regulatory procedure that are received within a short time frame, these requests could be given a priority, but this is still being discussed and to be defined. So to summarize the presentation of this proposal and what would be new and what would apply in terms of legacy clinical data in step 2 of the relaunch is that then if an access to documents requests related to legacy clinical data is received, it will trigger a clinical data publication procedure. So marketing authorization holders can then expect to receive an invitation email so they can start preparing the documents to be published in our clinical data portal. And with this, I conclude my presentation and I will give the floor to my colleague, Radu Popescu. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Today I have the pleasure to speak about the EMA Health Canada collaboration on clinical data publication with focus on steps taken to streamline the review of clinical data packages. I'm Radu Popescu, member of the clinical data publication team at the EMA. So, some of you may wonder why we even talk about the EMA Health Canada collaboration. The answer is simple. EMA and Health Canada are the regulatory agencies that do publish the clinical data submitted in support of the marketing authorization applications, and our collaboration goes back to the times Policy 70 was implemented at the EMA. So therefore, it comes as no surprise that both transparency initiatives, Policy 70 and public release of clinical information known as PRCI, have the same types of clinical documents in scope for publication, and even more, the same publication timelines, 120 days post-regulatory outcome. During COVID pandemic, we further consolidated and aligned our views on what could be considered out of scope in terms of documents and information contained within the clinical documentation. Moreover, we have agreed to accept each other agency's overlay text used to mark the redacted, commercially confidential information and personal data. As our colleagues already highlighted, we also looked into aligning our requirements and expectations in relation to the anonymization strategies proposed and implemented by the applicants. These discussions led to the creation of a joint anonymization report form template, which has been used by applicants since September last year. The latest collaboration project, which is subject to my presentation, looks at how we could streamline the review and submission of clinical data packages and reduce the duplication of efforts for regulators and applicants for those products for which a marketing authorization application is submitted in both jurisdictions. We focused our efforts on running a single review pilot during the course of this year, and we are now in a position to present our proposals on the collaboration principles of the single review. So we have identified several areas of collaboration, starting with sharing information on which marketing authorization applications are submitted in each jurisdiction. This would imply regular exchange of information between the two agencies, which would facilitate an early identification of those procedures that may be suitable for single review. Once these procedures are identified, with the agreement of the applicants, we would proceed to assigning a lead review agency and inform the applicants accordingly. In parallel, we would be working on establishing the list of documents for publication applicable to each jurisdiction. This would allow the applicants to get in a consolidated manner and at once the full picture of the clinical documentation to be published, including the out-of-scope information. As soon as the applicant finalizes the preparatory work, the redaction proposal package can be submitted to the nominated lead agency. The lead agency would perform the review within the usual timelines and consult on specific issues the non-lead agency, so that at the end of the review process, one single outcome agreed by both agencies can be shared with the applicant. There is one caveat to this. Those documents specific to the package to be published in the jurisdiction of the non-lead agency still needs to be reviewed by the non-lead agency. Of note, the applicants can make us aware, any of the agencies, in advance that their document packages are suitable for single review, and then they would be happy to be part of the single review process. I will come back to this point on my next slide. And the last area of collaboration is the publication of clinical data packages. So following the agreement on the outcome of the single review, the applicant is expected to provide a separate final redacted package to each of the agencies. Depending on how fast the review of the non-overlapping documents is concluded by the non-lead agency, we could also aim synchronizing the publication in the two jurisdictions. For those packages which are not suitable for single review and are already published in the other jurisdiction, we would recognize the work already done and would only look at the non-overlapping documents. You may wonder how we plan to select those procedures suitable for joint review. The proposed criteria are straightforward, at least in our view, and would allow the applicants to make us aware in advance on whether their document packages would be suitable for single review. So in a nutshell, the proposed criteria are: the first one, the market authorization application has to be submitted in both jurisdictions. The timings of the planned conclusions of the two regulatory procedures fall within a 6-month window, and at least 70% of the documents are the same in both packages to be published in each of the jurisdictions. And on the last slide, I would like to emphasize the foreseen benefits, especially for the applicants, of the EMA Health Canada collaboration on the review of the clinical data packages. So for those packages eligible for a single review, the applicants can start preparing both packages simultaneously. Only one redaction proposal package should be prepared and submitted to the lead agency, and only the non-overlapping documents should be submitted for review to the non-lead agency. One outcome would be applicable, will be issued and will be applicable for both jurisdictions. For those packages already published in other jurisdiction, we will no longer require a complete submission of the redaction proposal package, but we would be focusing our review only on those documents which are specific to our jurisdiction, if any of such documents exist. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm handing over to Anne-Sophie.
Thank you very much. I'm currently looking at the question on Slido. We now have finished our 4 presentations, so thanks a lot to the speakers. Looking at the Slido, so that what I will do is I will address, read some of the question, going for question which are more popular, I would say, and give the floor to colleagues whenever needed. So the very first question is about addressing the backlog of publication, and I think this has been answered through the presentation given by David. So I will not go through it again. However, if you have more detailed question on the topic, please put them in the system. Your second question, which is raising quite some interest, is about the harmonized timeline with CTIS and Policy 70. As you know, CTIS and CDP do have very different scope. CTIS is about all clinical trial conducted in the EU, and their timelines are linked to the conduction of the trial, as well as the publication of the report linked to the completion of the study, which is very different from clinical data publication, where this is not linked to the study being conducting in EU or not EU, but all over. And this is when the study is part of a marketing authorization application. Therefore, the timelines are very much not comparable and would be extremely difficult to align. So we are currently, as CDP team, working very closely with our colleague on the clinical trial regulation. And you have noticed that we have very aligned guidance on transparency in dealing with CCI and personal data. However, there's for the time being no plan in aligning the timeline of submission from CDP and CTIS. So that is one of the question I can see appearing, and please apologize if it moved too fast and I jump from one question to another. So your second question would be about a consultation. So this is here very different from a public consultation as we can find when we are issuing or updating a policy. Here we're talking from the question about the updated guidance. This type of webinar is in a way part of the consultation, because not only we would like to seek your questions, but also your comments, your feedback. For example, when we presented the legacy procedure option, we could see some thumbs up, so we take it as a positive. So if you do have comment, feedback on the proposal, please put them as well in Slido, not just the question. So, of course, the update we would put, we will have in place, will be published, but that may not be the official, I would say, very procedural public consultation, as we do have a policy, but in a lighter version. However, the view of our stakeholders is always very important in this type of update. Moving to the next question, it's about harmonizing Policy 70 and the policy of transparency in Health Canada. We have several questions about this collaboration on screen. For the time being, we are really looking at all aspects that we can align, and we need very much to keep in mind our respective legal framework in terms of privacy data, in terms of anonymization, and in terms of commercially confidential information. So we are working together at collaborating into making it as much as possible a single package and an assessment which is done with the same spirit. However, for a company who have done both procedure, there are some documents which are more very much, I would say, EMA source or Health Canada, and those ones we cannot escape. They are part of the scope, and they need to be processed in 2 different packages. So bear with us. We've been collaborating with Health Canada for quite a long time. We really are putting all effort into working in the same direction, and you have seen that with the common anonymization report template, which was issued some months ago. So bear with us. We're really trying to move as much as we can, and we're also counting on company who are part of this exercise of having parallel submission to give us their feedback, practically speaking, in terms of procedure, etc., so that we can make it as good as possible. Looking at the Slido, is this step 2 applicable to marketing authorization application? So these are questions about the scope. So maybe I'm turning to Karen, if you'd like to address the question on the scope. We have here a question on step 2 and marketing authorization application submitted before April. And we have also a second question, which is about repeating the scope and the timelines of step 2. Please, Karen.
Yes, no, thank you for that. In terms of the marketing authorization applications before April 2025, I can say that no, we will not be considering that they are in scope. We're looking at a restart date from April 2025 onwards. And as I said in my presentation, that we will be bringing this proposal for the next widening of the scope to our management board for approval at hopefully before the end of this year in December. And once we have received that, we will be publishing a precise restart date for the widened scope. But in addition to that, we would also be sending invitation letters to each individual marketing authorization holder who has a procedure which is in scope. So we would encourage people not to start preparing packages until you receive the invitation letter from us, or if you have a doubt, that rather than prepare a package, that you consult with us in advance and that we can say whether it is in scope or not. Sorry, they're not.
Thanks a lot, Karen. So the next question is again about CDP and CTIS, and asking if the same version of the CSR can be used both for CDP and CTIS. So the process is that for CTIS, the company has to submit an anonymized clinical study report, and for CDP, it's about a full package of documents. So anonymized document, of course, anonymized clinical data, as well as an anonymization report. So the document can be the same as long as it does answer to the requirement from both sides, being anonymized, of course. And from the CDP, there is a thorough assessment of what you would propose as CCI and how the anonymization is run. But you need to keep in mind that we have aligned as much as possible requirement on both sides, but they do have their independent system of assessment prior to them being submitted. If they end being the same report, anonymized, then of course they can both be put in the system. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read at the same time. So we have another question, but it's more or less in the same line, which is a CTIS, CSR made public first in CTIS be accepted in Policy 70. Again, if what you have submitted for CTIS does answer to the requirement of CDP, does follow the anonymization principle and has been assessed by EMA and is fine to go, then of course they can be the same document. However, should you come to CDP with a document saying this has been submitted in CTIS, that will not be sufficient to have it automatically taken on board for clinical data publication. So the scope has been answered. Can the redacted publish? It's the same question, CDP and CTIS. when we mention clinical type 2 variation, we are indeed talking about extension of therapeutic indication, as Karen presented in her slide. I'm still looking. If Health Canada exclude biosimilar and generic, we are here not talking that they have been excluded from policy 70. They are currently excluded in step 2 of relaunch of clinical data publication. And I would say that it is more a question to be addressed to Health Canada in, I guess, another forum. Then you have question on the legacy document and the way we're going to handle them. So here the proposal is indeed to have a publication of legacy procedure data packages triggered by a request to be published. And we are here using our web form on access to document. So the idea, but again, the detail has not been set in the exact step of the process. However, the idea is to use the web form that we do have on the EMA website into asking for a document. And that request being linked to a publication of data, clinical data, will trigger the clinical data publication system. So then it will not be handled as an access to document under the ATD regulation, meaning it will not have a 15 days procedure. So we're using the entry point of access to document into triggering a publication of clinical data. Individual data are in the scope of step 2. As you know, the individual patient data, or what we call today line listing, for example, are part of the phase 2 of the policy 70 and have not yet been started. So what we're first trying to achieve is a full relaunch of the phase 1 of CDP. And that's what we are currently doing with the step 1 and step 2 of the relaunch. And for the time being, we are not planning in the near future to look at publication of individual patient data. So they are not part of the step 2. We also have the multiple legacy procedure, and I guess a company could be worried that indeed they have too many requests triggered by an access to document request. Of course, should we have several packages requested to be published, we would enter into a discussion. We would reach out to the company in order to have a plan that would suit both sides, EMA and MAH/applicant side, not to overflow colleague from all sides. So we would enter into a discussion with the concerned company. At least the step 2, I think we've been, some of the questions are redundant. Karen, you...
Sorry, no, we're just looking at the list of questions here. I see there's a question here with asking, are we intending to publish the list of the legacy procedures similar to what Health Canada does? And no, it is not our intention to publish such a list on our website. That the CHMP opinions are available, and the information regarding the CHMP opinions are published, as is the public assessment reports. So if people are particularly interested in the clinical documents, they can, as we've highlighted, approach through the access to documents. So the transparency is there for those particular procedures. In terms of repeating again the proposed step 2 scope and timeline, Yeah, what we've said is that it's Q2 2025. So what we wanted to highlight today is that we are looking at a fairly imminent restart of extending the scope, but that is subject to the approval of our management board here at EMA. And we intend to bring that forward to our management board in December of this year. So once we have their agreement, then we would start issuing the invitation letters and giving a minimum of 3 months notice. So the earliest that we would anticipate requesting packages are for procedures which would fall within CHMP opinions in April of 2025. So that is the absolute earliest time point, and then it may be later than that. And we will, as I say, communicate that and put that information into the public domain following the agreement with our management board. So should I pass back to you for some?
Thank you very much. I can see as well some question regarding the access to document or the triggering of a publication via access to document, asking if that would be the scope of CDP or it would trigger also publication of RMP and other document. For your information, when through the access to document, we receive a request for an RMP, so risk management plan, it's already triggering a publication, but that publication of the RMP, which has been requested via a normal access to document request, is then put on our EMA website together with the EPAR. So it does indeed trigger publication, but is completely disconnected from any publication that can occur with CDP. I think I'm conscious of time, and I can see we only have a couple of minutes before we end this webinar. So just for you to know, the presentation will be made available on the EMA website after this webinar. The recording will also be published on our EMA website. We have still some questions in chat. We will do our best to address them more in the update of the question and answer that CDP has published, as well as taking them on board to update the external guidance. So bear with us. We will address those questions, not in the same format, but they will be very helpful to us in shaping the update of the Q&A and the guidance. Also, should you have any question on procedure that are your own, so basically not on the step 2 process, but really question because you foresee some procedure or you wonder if they will be part of step 2, you can reach out to the clinical data publication team using the same web form, which is to ask a question on the EMA website. Please put in the title CDP, and that will help us triaging them directly to the team that they can reach out to you without wasting time. So any question which are related to your procedure, use the web form and put CDP in the title, and the CDP team will of course answer to you. I think we now can close this webinar. I'd like again to thank you very much for your help, your participation. Any of all your questions, comment, feedback would be very useful to us into ensuring that the system we are putting in place are really answering to the public need and are feasible on both sides at EMA and in the pharmaceutical industry. So thank you very much for today.